Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's 4 p.m. There being a quorum of council present, I call the City Council Strategic Planning Meeting of February the 8th, 2022 to order. At this time, I'll recognize Interim City Manager Brian Bourne.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Council. Again, we have some presentations on the budget. We'll be looking at facilities maintenance, planning, development, code enforcement, and police tonight. And I'm going to change hats on you tonight and present the facilities items. I don't want to get rusty in my... Okay. So this is fiscal year 2023 departmental budget discussion for facilities. And in the base budget deficiencies or deferred items, we have a few equipment needs in this item. Mulch blower, we have a current funding of $4,000. We have a need of $12,000, so there's an $8,000 increase. And this is due to the mulch contract that we have. We have more areas to cover. So the increase, we've contracted out for them to come blow it. It takes a lot of time to haul it and do it by hand manually. So this is a lot more efficient and quicker for us to contract that service out. So with the additional areas, it's a little more. The contract cost, of course, materials increase. Next slide. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, please. We have another item, soil for downtown requested planters. This kind of follows along with a budget item in the downtown budget that was presented a while back. If the new planters are funded, there will be a need for more soil in those planters. So this would increase that budget by about $3,500. So if one is funded, the other would have to be funded. So that's the way to look at that. If we get the new planters, then we'll need the additional soil materials to make those happen. Capital improvements, new initiatives. This is regarding the old water plant facility, the Parks and Rec maintenance facility. That facility has gotten some attention in the last few years. There's been some major work done quite a few years ago with roofs and then cleaning out the interiors of the buildings. They were basically leaking and full of kind of discarded storage items, but they're all clean now. The current interest is to replace the mismatched glass on some of the windows. Facilities has been absorbing that in their normal budget and filling that in as they can. This is a good project in some of their downtime, less busy time of the year, or on a rainy day. It's a good project for them to do. But this would buy the supplies for the glass and some refurbishing of the landscape in front of that building to make that a nicer feature coming into the downtown. And this has been brought up numerous times over the last year, so that's an estimated cost of about $10,000 to accomplish that. Sorry, I forgot to advance that slide. So there it is there. Our next item is a scissor lift. Let's see, I went too far ahead, didn't I? No. There we go. Okay. Am I missing one? Yes. Let's go back. Roof replacement. As you know, we're constantly needing to replace obsolete equipment, roofs, HVACs. Our next big ticket items are roofs. We have some aging roofs. The next two would be the customer service building and the current Ellen Fitzgerald Senior Center. That's important because if you remember from earlier discussions, the plan is to move fire administration there. So making sure that building is weather tight and secure is imperative to continue its use. As with any other facility, the roof is important. So those are individually cost itemized on there. In total, those estimated costs to contract those two roofs out would be about $230,000. The customer service building, it just to give you some history, when it was renovated, that roof was not replaced. So whatever
That's the
roof
old
was
bank building?
that's the old
Oh,
bank building.
okay, I just wanna
Yes,
make sure I had it
right
right.
over there on Windsor.
Windsor, yeah.
Yes,
We didn't put a roof on that at that time?
we did not. We did not. So the interior was done. The roof was in pretty good shape back then. That was what 10 years or so ago, maybe. I forget. Time flies when you're having fun. So, but now it's due for replacement. And as you know, that's a very important division that's housed in the building. That's our accounts payable there, and meter reading, and all those other facilities that support our utilities. And then the senior center, that roof is probably about 25 years old, as best we can tell, so it's due a replacement before we have major issues with it. Our next item is a 32-foot scissor lift. This in facilities is quite a chore to, or a needed piece of equipment. There's many lights or different things that are way up on the ceilings. With the addition of the Theater Science Center and our rec centers, a scissor lift has become somewhat of a need. There is one that at the aquatic center that we've used, but sometimes there's a transfer kind of conflict there. So this one would come with the scissor lift and a trailer to transport it, and that would be an estimated cost of about $38,000. And this would give the flexibility of being able to take care of things as needed rather than waiting and scheduling them, kind of grouping. Just ease that a little bit. And then, as some of you may recall, a few years ago we made a concerted effort to replace outdated, obsolete, aged-out HVAC equipment, and I think there was $100,000 allocated for about 3 years that we used. That money has since gone. We've since have more HVAC units that have come to their life expectancy. We need to start replacing them. There's currently $25,000 in that budget. An additional $50,000 would help us achieve that without any interruptions or delays to get those aged units replaced. So we'll need, current funding is $50,000. So it would be about $75,000, an additional $25,000. And we have some, heating units in City Hall are aging, and those need to be replaced. We've recently had to do a lot of work out in the finance area this year. So it's just one of those things. We have to replace it. Otherwise, people can't work, get their jobs done. So that's all. Eric, did I leave out anything, miss anything? Any more explanation I need to give? Okay. Any questions?
So,
All right. I will turn it over to Planning and Development. Lisa.
Thanks, Bruce. All right. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I'm Lisa Stywinter with Planning and Development. And just as a reminder, the Planning and Development Department does consist of 6 divisions, which include permitting, planning, building standards, code enforcement, community maintenance, and community development. So I'm here today to bring before you our department needs. Can everybody hear me? Okay?
yes.
All right. So the first division is our Code Enforcement Division, and the Code Enforcement Division is requesting $50,000 in contracted services to potentially demolish 5 abandoned residential structures within the city of Monroe. Currently, the city has at a minimum of at least 10 residential dwellings that is located in different areas of the city that have been abandoned and vacated for more than 6 months, but they're located on commercial and industrial property. Well, our current minimum housing ordinance only allows us to enforce residential structures that are on residential property. So currently, right now, we don't have a tool to address abandoned residential structures or non-residential structures that are on commercial or industrial property. And we've hired a consultant, and we're at the very beginning stages to establish an abandoned structure ordinance. If that is approved by council, then we would need to, we're requesting funding allocated in the budget of $50,000 to at least address 5 of those structures within the next budget year.
Would that ordinance cover the rest of them? And isn't that a property owner, responsibility?
If the abandoned structure ordinance is adopted, it will operate just exactly like the minimum housing ordinance. It's just state statute gives us ability. We just don't have the ordinance in place here to address those structures right now.
Could you get it done before July 1st?
Before July 1st? I don't have the funding to do them if the ordinance was adopted to do it, but they've been sitting out there for a while, and this is another tool that code enforcement could really use to help improve the appearance and the beautify our city.
But isn't that the way this thing works? Even if we remove the property, it can be made a lien against that property for tax purposes and collected if sold and or ownership changes?
Correct. It would operate exactly like the minimum housing, that if we went through the process and the property owner did not repair or demolish, then the city would demolish that structure if approved by council, place a lien on the property. It's still their property, we just have a lien on it, and then if it's ever, typically we can collect it over time.
And I'm aware of the fact that they're probably not even paying the property tax and all of that, so it's not that, you know.
I haven't done
get
the
it, but
research on
I
it.
just wondered if there weren't some way we could get our money back some way. That's all, yeah.
The second is another initiative. The code enforcement is requesting $100,000 in contracted services to hire a consultant to assist with developing a non-residential maintenance code to include ordinance development, public outreach and meeting facilitation, process development, and all the necessary forms and applications. The purpose of this non-residential maintenance code is to establish minimum standards for the maintenance, sanitation, and safety of all non-residential buildings and structures within the city. This is also an additional tool that code enforcement could utilize to help beautify our city and help improve the public health, safety, and welfare, quality of life, property values. It would operate exactly like the minimum housing ordinance, but for commercial and industrial properties or structures. phase two of, so the first year, we would ask for $100,000 to hire a consultant to develop the ordinances and the processes and do public outreach and stakeholder input sessions. If approved and adopted, and then phase two, we would be asking for additional staff to help implement the new ordinance. Phase three, we would be asking for funding to also implement the ordinance.
How long would it take for the assessment, do you think? For the actual, once the consultant, provided we do all of that, how long would that take?
To develop the ordinance and go through the public outreach engagement
How long would it
process.
take the consultant to give us that information?
I can't speak to as how long they would take. At least 6 months to a year. I would say that would be at the minimum, most likely a year, because once you get in, develop an ordinance and you start having, the public outreach part of it, there's a lot of feedback and there's going back and forth to, revise the ordinances, review it, go back out to the public. So I would say at least a year.
Okay, thank you.
And 2 people is the minimum?
That would
Long
be
term.
the third year.
Couldn't get by with 1. I'm cheap.
Well, we're not asking for those right now to enforce this ordinance, but we are, the next need for the code enforcement division is a code enforcement officer. Before 2010, the division contained 5 code enforcement officers. The division currently has 3 officers at this time, and in 2017, the Community Maintenance Division was established within our department. Well, as a result of that, a staff person rose to the top to be the supervisor of that division, which was one of our code enforcement officers. So currently we have about 2.5 code enforcement officers. Before 2010, we had 5. Our population is about 35,540, and we're at about 30.9 square miles. And our city is approximately 50% rental. So there is a need for the code enforcement to be full capacity as it once was in 2010. So we are requesting a code enforcement officer, which we did, I think, in the last couple budgets as well. The next division that we'll go over the budget needs is for community maintenance. As I mentioned before, the Community Maintenance Division was established in 2017. They were established to also to help beautify the city and for public health, safety, and welfare. But their main role is to remove illegal dumping, house cleanouts. They perform trash removal throughout the city, illegal signs, and then they also handle the clean out of the downtown dumpster corrals every day of the week. And then also bulky waste removal that is placed on the street outside the day of their collection. Waste Pro, our solid waste company, picks up bulky waste on the day of the collection, but if someone places a couch out there or several pieces of furniture out there and their collection's not for a whole week later, then we send community maintenance out to get it off the street as soon as we can.
So we did 2 back in the day, and now you're saying we need 2 more.
We did establish the program with 2, and as a startup of a new program, that worked fine. But we have seen that there are increases over the past 5 years as far as the amount of trash removal, the amount of bulky waste and furniture removal. And it started to pose a challenge on the division when one person's out, and it recently hit home because we had one individual that was out for many weeks, which pulls a staff person from code enforcement. So that division's already 2.5 people, and then you pull another person to help with community maintenance. And then also if you have the crew out cleaning up trash on a road, but you have a call bulky waste over here, they're constantly being pulled away daily from their duties. So we felt the need of 2 additional community maintenance workers and the equipment. So that would certainly be the discretion of council. Next division is the Building Standards Division. We are also asking for an additional building inspector that will serve to meet the high demand of requested inspections due to new residential subdivisions being constructed. Also, prior to 2010, this division consisted of 6 building inspectors to perform the inspections and plan review. We gained an inspector last year, which brought the division up to 5 staff, but we're still not back at the original capacity that we were before 2010. And the planning department, as all of you are aware, is experiencing a high volume of development permit submittals. Quite frankly, the building standards and permitting was branched off from Union County in 2001. Since we took it over, this is the highest volume that we've ever had. Also, we didn't have any residential subdivisions from 2007 to 2016, so we did have a decrease in the need for inspections. But since 2016, there's been approximately 6,356 lots that have received rezoning approval. Many of those subdivisions have received a zoning approval or either in design phase, plan review, or under construction. In FY 2021, the division performed 14,475 inspections. And just from July 1st, 2021 to January 2022, they've already done 10,633 inspections.
Lisa, can you give me those numbers again?
In 2021, they performed 14,475 inspections. And then from July 2021 to January 2022, they're already at 10,633. On average, we are seeing anywhere from 90 to 100 plus inspections per day that's being requested, give or take each day, but that's pretty much where it's kind of running. Also, according to the North Carolina General Assembly, there's a law was passed that requires all inspections to be performed within a 2-day period. So we have 2 days to get those inspections completed. So we have that.
Is that when it's requested? And
Yeah, by the
just
time
got
it's
2 days to
requested and we
inspect?
perform the inspections, we have 2 days to get it done.
And how are we performing?
We have been performing and meeting that the next day. We perform the inspections. Typically it runs, they request it one day, they perform them the next day. Only problem that we've experienced recently when COVID hit the division, when we ended up being down to 1 person. So we partnered with Union County and they were willing to assist us. But other than that, we have been performing inspections the next day. So once again, we are requesting an additional inspector. And also another law was passed several years ago that requires all building revenue be used in the building standards division. So I think as of last year, I think we have in our fund balance approximately $315,000. And then currently right now, we are, last fiscal year, we projected $400,000 in revenue, and I think we went over $524,000. And then already from July to January, we have brought in an additional $504,000 over what we projected for the whole year. So if we keep the revenues continue to keep coming in for the next 6 months, we should hit $1 million above the revenue projection for this year. So the last division that will go over department needs is the planning division. And we are requesting an administrative receptionist. Planning and Development Department is requesting to add administrative reception that would serve as a receptionist to City Hall as well as the Planning and Development Department. In 2012, the customer service and the City Hall receptionist relocated to a new facility. Also during that time, the City Hall lobby area was renovated that required an employee to serve as the new receptionist. The administrative assistant too for the department took on the role as the City Hall receptionist, and has been performing in dual roles since 2012. The administrative assistant for the planning department is basically the historic district planning board and board of adjustment staff person. So they perform all the agenda packets, legal notices, adjoining property owner notifications, as well as transcribes those minutes for each of those boards. So it's become a challenge to perform the daily duties of transcribing minutes, being at the front desk and being the city hall receptionist. So we felt the need to at least ask for a position. So we are asking for an administrative receptionist to cover those duties. Last item for the budget needs for Planning and Development Department is a request for $500,000 to be allocated to the implementation of the Concord Avenue Master Plan. The Concord Avenue Master Plan is a small area redevelopment plan that was adopted in 2015. The purpose and intent for the plan was to improve the aesthetics, safety, viability, and appeal of the Kerr Street area through a comprehensive small area redevelopment plan. The plan also contained an action plan that listed specific action items and timeframes within the plan. Since 2015, the council did adopt the plan and voted to be proactive in implementing that plan. And since that time, there have been several action items that have been completed. And one of them was the most important was to establish a Concord Avenue overlay district that set the ordinance standards and district standards that would serve to implement the Concord Avenue Master Plan. We also incorporated the Concord Avenue Master Plan and overlay district in the land use plan update and the new proposed Unified Development Ordinance. One of the action items was to identify high priority sidewalks. The first sidewalk was installed recently that runs from Ingleside Street to Lomax Street, or what is called now Help Street. Another action item was to promote community spaces within the plan too. Our department was able to negotiate a land donation for the triangle piece between Concord Avenue and Seeker Shortcut that will do a beautification, kind of a small passive park there. And then last was another one was to establish a property acquisition program and monitor key parcels within the plan. We have established that program, and we have purchased 5 properties, 2 single-family dwellings and 3 multifamily quadruplexes, and we have demolished those that were somewhat slum and blight for the neighborhood. So Planning and Development is requesting the additional funding. The goal for that funding would be to solicit responses from qualified firms for their interest in providing professional services for the transportation improvements in the Concord Avenue Master Plan. A couple of the top priorities in implementing the plan, or kind of serving as catalyst, was to clean the area up. And then the next primary or important aspect is to develop that transportation framework that you have development and redevelopment that could occur. So this, if we were funded the money, the project would provide an evaluation of an intersection realignment, possibly roundabout, a road realignment, a road extension, and provide an estimate for the design, right-of-way, acquisition, and construction and design. And then we have an additional 5 properties that we would like to look at negotiating to purchase and remove within that area. And that's all the planning and development the budget needs, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And next we've got Chief Gilliard with Police Department.
You can use the mouse for the arrows.
You see that one right there? Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Brian Gilliard, Police Chief, and I'd like to talk with you today about our budget for next year. The first slide you'll see is our request to get the equipment and stuff that we need for the new facility. That wasn't in last year's budget, and we didn't really know what we would be needing once the new police department was completed. This is for the furniture, any equipment, and for our investigations division. This is what we did, and this year we did an estimate to see how much that would actually cost us, and this is what we're looking at moving forward. Mr. Gordon, you got a question? You want to fire away?
Well, no, not particularly. I'm
Okay.
aware that we're building a new facility and we'll need to put equipment in it.
Yes, sir. And that was
Now, that building's not gonna be available in 22 though, is it?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be in the next budget year. And so
Okay.
we'll start with the purchasing equipment in the fall, and hopefully the building's gonna be ready, I think May to June of '23. I just had to estimate right now. So
That is the estimated completion would be about April, May of '23. It's about an
Well, that's better than I thought, so I'm.
18-month construction.
The next line is our general operating budget, and the major increase for this one that I had was for our K-9 program. We've used some money this year for our K-9s. I didn't want that separated out. I'd like to have 2 budget year cycle, so we'd have a good estimate of what we're going to need going forward in the future years. And so that was what we estimated for this year from anything. The major increase in that line item was for our K-9 program. The next line item you'll see is for our uniforms. The next 2 slides will address our uniform issues. Each individual officer, by Labor Day, will replace 13 officers. And so that's about $2,000 per officer for new uniforms, bulletproof vest, their sidearms. And so we asked for $20,000 for the new officers that we'll be hiring this year, and another $20,000 for replacement uniforms for the officers. So both slides together will be a total of $40,000.
What's the highest, your new vest,
They're running about $900.
I'm not worried about the cost, I'm just curious about what caliber will it stop?
Can you answer that?
The new ones are 3A protection, about the same as a 2A protection. They're gonna stop a 44 caliber bullet. The protection level is how much force and trauma it does to your body. So there's not a real big difference between a 2A and 3A. They will stop a 44 Magnum. Some they're making will stop slug rounds for a shotgun. Your higher rifles, your 223s, your 7.62s. And wearing just a ceramic plate, they're not gonna stop.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Brian,
Sir?
the uniform and shoes, we heard yesterday from Officer Forbes that they have special boots and uniforms that they're using on these
Yes, sir.
encampment relocations. Are those one-time use?
No, sir. They would use those shoes. There's just a different type of boot. If you can see my shoes now, they're usually what we call our Class A dress shoes, and they would have boots that would be no different than what you could buy at Tractor Supply or anything. They just have a thicker soles. They stepped on a nail or a rock, it wouldn't injure their feet. So that was that's what I think he was referring to in yesterday's presentation.
Okay.
Overtime was our next slide. The overtime budget this past year was challenged with different issues of crime that we had to address and having officers called in to work. We did use overtime this year to address staffing shortages for COVID, officers being on COVID leave. So there's a variety of issues that we faced this past year for this reason why I wanted to increase the overtime budget. But those are the 2 main things. Obviously, as you see that we went back to having an air show in the 4th of July parade and 4th of July fireworks in our parade. Those types of things, obviously, they affect our bottom line, and it's something that we need every year. The last thing that I've asked for several years is our crime scene technician. What we're seeing as we transition into the new facility, this person will be extremely valuable to the organization. Our evidence custodian is eligible to retire in the next year, and so I know that's something that we'll face that challenge when that day comes. But using this position, we would also like to use it for our crime scene investigation and to help our detectives. This is a civilian position; it's not a sworn position, and so we've asked for that last few years. And as we get ready to move into the new facility, I think it's a good time to address that need once again. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Personnel for mental health, you don't have any, you're not suggesting anything in the budget for that?
Well, I'm sorry, Ms. James, I didn't hear you.
A personnel for mental health, you're not?
No, ma'am, I haven't addressed it. Quite frankly, right now, this year, I do not have the space to hire. If we brought new people in, moving forward to the new facility, I'd be more than happy to address that. But I don't have a ability to come in and say, hey, I need to bring somebody in just and solely dedicate them for mental health issues just for the police department.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I might make a comment about one of our departments. 2 weeks ago, on a Saturday, we had a fire at the shopping center that could have probably burned 3 or 4 buildings down if our fire department didn't respond the way they did. And I wouldn't give them an A, I'd give them a triple A. And Ron, and not only that, I had an opportunity to watch your guys in action, checking that out, how it started, why, you know, the whole works, and I was really impressed. So I wanted to commend you for that.
Outstanding job.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad there wasn't any worse than it was.
Could have been. Could have been.
We're good.
And I'd like to also express appreciation to Brian and all the staff. As you know, we've gone through a lot of COVID absences, a lot of it due to just being quarantined. Thank goodness they didn't actually have COVID, but they did follow the protocol and stayed out the required 5 days. And we were having to shift personnel from one department to another. As Lisa pointed out, the county stepped in with the inspections and helped us. They were a good neighbor on that, and for y'all that put that in place, to keep things rolling smooth, we all thank you and appreciate that. Any other thoughts, ideas, questions, suggestions?
If I may, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
maybe we can have a discussion regarding the strategic meeting and the council meeting. I know we're much earlier than I expected today. It went a lot quicker. It's hard for me to judge the discussions that might happen on different budget items or departments. And one idea that I'd like to discuss with all of you is possibly moving the strategic meeting to a separate day, which would allow us to have the meeting at whatever length it needs to be, not worrying about a council meeting or having to wait for an hour or so for a council meeting, and then having our council meeting on this Tuesday of the month. That would also eliminate the need for dinner being served between the two meals and trying to gauge the time frame of having discussion and then having time to eat. It's been a real challenge because I've seen these meetings as interim and as assistant manager. They can take quite a while with discussion at strategic, and then others that we expect would go longer or very short. It wasn't the discussion anticipated tonight, so if I'm open for suggestions on how to kind of resolve some of this.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
We started last month at 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just 1 month. Would it be a good idea, if anyone else has any input, of course, they could make it, to see how that goes for the next couple of months? Because we're all just learning one another now, and perhaps maybe how things were discussed in the past, or the length of the meetings in the past, as to how they might be going forward, might be quite different. And that could be, a good thing, or, just a neutral
Right.
thing. But I'm just saying, I wonder if we should just give it a couple more months. Not that your suggestion is not good, to see if that
Well, no,
works. That's just my first thought.
I'm
And
just
I'm open for,
throwing it out there. It's no big deal. But
My first thought is, we're probably not gonna get a consensus, but I do like the idea of a separate meeting for strategic, and then just go straight to a 6 o'clock meeting on Tuesday night. That would also eliminate having to worry about us eating. We could all just get our own food before we came and be here at 6 o'clock for the meeting. I like your idea. Now, doesn't have to be implemented next week, next month,
right.
but I think it's a good idea.
yeah, it's,
And Councilmember Thompson, that's, learning the new dynamics and everything, and that is a valid point. We're all, I think, still doing that,
yes, sir.
staff included, so giving it a little more time might be what we need to do to figure out exactly what type of discussion to expect. I'm just at a loss.
I understand, and I agree with Freddie. I don't know that you'd get a consensus, but personally, my preference would be to leave them on the same day, but I'm not opposed to moving it if it's better and it's, less work for the staff to have to worry about dinner. That would be a game changer for me. But the timing, I think that was just something we suggested,
Right.
as a something new. And sometimes we don't give things enough time to see how well they're going to work or not work. And
Right.
Your idea is a good one. So that's just my comment.
I think it's a good idea. I would agree with Freddie, and it would be a whole lot easier for those of us who have more scheduled day-to-day work, not to have to quit our workday at 3:30.
And I believe in the past, Brian, that we did do that, did we not? Didn't we formally used to have strategic planning separate from the regular meeting?
I don't think so. I don't remember. In my 13 years, 14 years here, I don't remember it being on a separate day.
I don't know why.
We didn't, we had two meetings, we had two council meetings a month, and
Right.
one of them had a strategic attached to it, is what I'm remembering.
Okay.
Mayor, if I might, is the council wanting to change the meeting time for the next month to the 4:30? Because if so, you would need to move, you need to do that by a motion. But if you want to maintain it at 4 o'clock, you don't have to make a change. So if you want to go ahead and try out a different meeting time, that's something we just have to make sure that you go ahead and do, so that it is then in your regular schedule of meetings that is required under state law.
And another thought, Mujib, you just brought another thought into my head, and you might have to give some input on this, but moving the strategic to another day would allow a little bit of flexibility in having that meeting actually be a remote meeting. Instead of having everyone in, it eases the need for the public comment. There's typically no public comment period at that meeting or public hearings at those meetings, so that requirement of fulfilling the need for electronic comment and all of that would not come into play for those strategic meetings held remotely. So now, I don't know if that's just in play for the state of emergency or if that's a permanent thing, but it does eliminate the need to all be here.
I sort of agree with Councilwoman Thompson on the same day of the council meeting, because you're not tying up another day. If you're going to have the council meeting at 6, why not have your other meeting at 4:30?
Okay.
But if we have it remotely, it wouldn't, I mean, you could do it at lunchtime.
As a follow-up to what the interim city manager noted, the ability to have remote meetings is clear through the state of emergency. So just note that right now, the governor has not indicated he will end the state of emergency, but looks in January of 2023, the new, some new legislation passed in the recent budget would end it without his ability to, you'd have to go to the General Assembly for continued approval. So if you were to do anything remotely, it would only be for the remainder of this year, most likely.
And I understand the lunchtime thing too, but does that work for everybody here who has other response? I know you guys it would work, but does that work for everybody?
You're right.
I know for me it wouldn't always work. I have
And-
class.
I'm just trying to see where everyone stands
I
on all of
understand, and it's
this.
good discussion, real good discussion.
I'd like to see us try 4:30, maybe for 2 months, and see
Okay.
how it goes. My concern, and I have to agree with Julie and Lynn, we moved committee meetings pretty much to the first 2 weeks of the month. So we have a lot when we have a lot of meetings the first 2 weeks of the month, that becomes very cumbersome on staff as well. And I almost hate to add yet another day that we have to pull staff in to meet if it's not necessary. And so I'm just saying, I like the idea of having strategic planning, say at 4:30, and we can control the agenda, keep in mind. So we can pretty much kind of time it where we're done by 5:30 based on what we put on the agenda, and just see how it goes for 2 months. But I'm really not for adding yet another official daily meeting right now, because there's so much that goes on in the first 2 weeks of the month. And you got public safety that meets on the first Monday of the month. General services meets on the first Thursday of the month. City council meets on the second Tuesday of the month. And other committees meet within the first 2 weeks of the month as well. And that's a lot on staff to bring them into those meetings. And I just hate to see us add yet another time that we would have to pull staff away from their regular duties to be here with us. But that's just me.
And those are the official meetings. Those are not even the ones staff does at the staff level. So I realize we're all meeting to death in our own jobs and this job.
And it may be that if there are some months where there's truly not enough to hold a strategic planning meeting, I don't think there's anything that says we have to have it.
Right.
If we don't need it, I mean, if we
Well,
truly
if we
have
don't
it,
need it, I would kind of confer with the mayor and see
Right.
if we need to just cancel if there's no need for it. I don't believe in having a meeting. I love seeing you all, but we don't have to have a meeting to do that if there's no business to conduct. I think I have a few, is there any,
No, I agree.
Councilman James?
4:30, I think 4:30, and then go into it. And if it runs over, you can move it to the regular agenda, correct?
Well, we could move it into the regular agenda or move it to the next strategic.
Correct. Okay, sounds good.
So I think the consensus I'm hearing is that we leave it with the standard, with our scheduled council meeting, it just changed to 4:30.
Correct.
So then you're gonna need a motion to that effect. And Mayor Pro Tem, I think you had, I don't know if you had suggested that it would be for just the next 2 months, so if that's what you intend, the
if-
motion would need to be to change the strategic meetings for March and April to begin at 4:30 p.m.
If I may suggest, why don't we just make that change and then we can change it later? Let's just
Again,
make them
we
at
need to-
4:30
we need
and
to go
then we
with your
change
idea.
it later
Yeah.
if we see the need.
Correct.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Correct.
I
And
agree
there
with
would
that.
need to be a motion for the remainder of the year, because you only adopt the calendar on a year-to-year basis, so So the motion would actually be to move the strategic meeting to 4:30 PM for the remainder of 2023.
All right, that's my motion.
A second.
All right, we got a motion and a second to change the strategic planning to 4:30 for now and the rest of the year. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for indulging my discussion.
That was,
Absolutely.
No, it's great to have those
I
discussions.
understand it. I understand it.
all right, if there's no other business, then I will now recess the meeting until 6 o'clock. Thank y'all for being here.
There we go.
Go to the library, I guess, and
I guess we do.
You're doing good.